are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody. I wanted to give everybody a little bit of chance to show up and to answer our poll. So far, it looks like we are slightly over 60% and on-premise, and the remainder will be online. That's kind of what I expected. So anyway, today's presentation, we're going to talk about Dynamics CRM Administration. This is just kind of introduction to some of the things that I do on a kind of a weekly basis for my customers, and kind of wanted to educate you guys on the same. So hopefully we'll have some good questions toward the end, and we can get into this. So let's get started. So my name is Mitch Milam. I'm a Dynamics CRM architect. You can reach me via email at Mitch@XRM Coaches, blogs at Infinite-X is my main technical blog, and of course on Twitter at Mitch Milam. So if you feel free to give me a contact note anytime you want via any of these methods. If you got some questions, follow up from this webinar or from the others, or anything else you have a problem or question with. Again, this is part of my Teaching Tuesdays series, and what we're doing here is just every Tuesday, every other Tuesday, however it works out, I have a short webinar on whatever topic I can come up with. I've got a Google moderator group out at tinyurl.com/teachingtuesdays. And if you go out there, you can add your own topics. You can vote those up. The site's going to die at the end of the month because Google is discontinuing the service, so I'll have to come up with a different way after that. But get your thoughts in before the end of June, and we can talk about some more things. Okay, so today we're going to talk about just the basics of doing CRM administration, and we're really not going to talk too in depth about some of the more horribly technical things like CRM tracing and stuff like that. This is just a very, very high level overview of the things that you can do immediately to make a big difference in your life as a CRM administrator. So we're going to talk about maintaining system jobs, troubleshooting workflow and plugin issues, historical information. If you're on premise, working with the event log, the system job editor, and tracing, and then also user management and email management tricks that will apply to everybody. So the following procedures are standard across any CRM system, no matter what you're going to be doing. Whoops. Sorry about that. Thank you for correcting me. Let me close the poll. How are we doing now? There we go. Sorry, I'm in on, let me start back up so you can see now. There we go. Oops. So, there we go. This is me. There's a tiny URL I was talking about, tinyurl.com/teachingtuesdays. Here's our agenda. And now we're back on track with standard procedures. Okay, so the first thing that you really need to kind of get a handle on when working with Dynamics CRM is monitoring and maintaining the system job information. So system jobs are things that happen behind the scenes, either automatically or as part of some kind of automation process that you've created, such as workflows, plugins, things like that. So the modifications to this system job system can really affect how your CRM system works. It can be responsible for very interesting things happening to your system. So what we're going to go through is some of the things that we use to actually maintain those things. So the system jobs are found underneath settings and has its own group within the system. And again, it's just things that happen behind the scenes automatically. So the first thing that I like to do is create a series of personal views that we're going to show me a restricted set of data. The first is system jobs with messages. So a system job has a field called message, and the message is only filled out if there's an error. If the system job, whatever it may have been, occurred naturally without any problems at all, then the message will always be blank. If there was an exception or some other type of issue, then the message will actually have data inside of that. So one of the things that you do to find issues is you look for any messages that, any system jobs where the message field contains data. And again, that will be a field that basically a system job that has an error. And the reason that we do this is because there are two types of failures within the system jobs. First is a hard failure, where the status has already failed. That could happen if you had a hardware issue or something happened with your SQL Server or a variety of things. more than likely what you're going to have is a soft failure. The system job will be in what they call a waiting state. Unfortunately, it's waiting forever. It will never come back. Sometimes you can restart these things, sometimes you cannot. But by finding the system jobs with messages, you can find out which things are actually officially finished or are waiting for real, or they're waiting with an error. So this is number one. Number two is a variation of this, and what I do is I just call this system jobs with messages recent, and it shows me things that were created today and yesterday. And the reason that we put this this filter on is because it's very, very easy to get lost in the forest, and it's really and truly, in most cases, it doesn't really help you to look at error messages that are a week old. Strictly because when you're doing so, you can't fight that problem at that point in time. It happened a week ago. The problem or the circumstances that made the error occur may have fixed itself. That happens all the time, especially if you're in an on-premise environment. So really and truly, the only things you really care about are today and yesterday. If you go past that, it's just historical information. It's good to spot patterns. It's what it's used for. But if I'm trying to troubleshoot an issue, in all likelihood, I need to find the issue immediately as it's happening, so I can track down why it's happening. When you get into some of the things you run into, especially concerning SQL, since everything within CRM is inside of a SQL database, then anything that happens to the SQL server is going to affect CRM. So you'll have a large instance of timeouts for some reason. Either your database was busy, or maybe you were doing a backup and you didn't know, or maybe there's another SQL process that was running. So trying to spot problems when they're happening is part of your job as an administrator. The third type of thing I like to create for personal view is a system job that is looking for canceled or failed workflows. So we'll talk about canceled here in a minute when we get into workflows and things. But the real thing is a failed workflow is, again, one that hit a hard error that cannot be recovered from in most cases. So this is a system error. Canceled in most cases should be canceled by someone, a human, or some part of the system. And the reason that we look at these two is because if we have a hard failure or something was canceled, we need to kind of figure out why these things are happening. So again, this is good for spotting patterns. So let's talk about cleaning up stuff. So if you have workflows and you use extensively, there is an option on the Administration tab to automatically delete the instance of the workflow after it occurred, assuming there were no errors. And that checkbox at the bottom will do this. Now, this has been built into the system for at least here in 2011, I think. And the idea was, if the workflow ran, then we're going to delete the record of it running. That is generally a bad idea. And the reason it's a bad idea, and again, it depends on the workflow, but if you are having a workflow that runs on a record when a specific type of event occurs, either an edit or some kind of update or whatever it might be, you really and truly want to have a record of that for at least a period of time. So in general, I do not recommend doing this. But again, it depends on the type of thing we're doing. There are some workflows that run that I could care less if they ran or not. So I check this box so it doesn't fill up my system job table. How I like to do it, I'll get into in just a minute after we talk about the plugin execution as well. So if you have plugins that you've created, or in some cases that you've purchased from somebody, what we will do is have a similar setting for an asynchronous plugin operation, which is very similar to the workflow. And again, it's at the bottom, as you can see the checkbox. If async operation status is equal successful, I would like you to delete this. And again, it really and truly depends on what this thing did. If you need a record of it happening, then keep it around for a few days or a month or whatever. If you don't care if it happened or not, then check this box. In most cases, you can use the plugin registration tool, which is what the screenshot is from, to modify any plugin step that is in the system, whether or not you wrote it or not. Like I said, again, in most cases. So again, if you don't know what you're doing, then just leave this step alone. But if you do know what you're doing, this is available to you. So here's how I like to do it. So again, the reason we don't check those boxes is because in most cases we need to have a history of what is going to happen or what has happened with our records. So what I like to do is create a bulk delete job, and we can do this with either CRM Online or CRM On-Premise. And the bulk delete job is run on the system jobs table where the status reason is equal to failed or canceled, and it was started on older than X months, X being 1. So what this says is I would like for you to go and do a query on the system job table where the status reason is either canceled or failed, and it was started more than a month ago, and I want you to delete those things. And then what we do is we actually set this where we have it can run once a week, every 7 days, every 30 days, depending on the frequency that makes sense for your organization. A lot of times it's better to do this like on a 7-day cycle. And 30 days or 1 month gives us enough time to notice a problem. This has only really bit me one time, and it just happened that the bulk delete job ran on like a Friday, and the person noticed they had an issue on Monday, and it occurred literally 32 days ago or 33 days ago, and they just never found it. And unfortunately, by that point, it was too late to actually find what had happened. But again, if it takes you a month to find a problem, then maybe we have to do a little bit more work with our maintenance procedures. The second one I like to create is to remove successful workflows. So again, instead of checking the box that we looked at earlier, what we look for is status reasons of succeeded, if it's older than 1 month, and the system job type equals workflow. So this allows me to actually remove workflow instances that were successfully completed over a month old, and that way I can keep them around long enough to make sure that I don't have any issues. And again, this is mostly used to make sure that the workflow actually ran, because if you're in a development type environment where you're constantly pushing out changes, sometimes your workflows can get turned off, accidentally or on purpose, not restarted. And when things don't happen, you need to be able to open the record, look at your background process history, and see if there are actually things at work. And if you don't see them, that means that something else is going on. So this is just a troubleshooting step. So let's talk about email management for a second here. I'm sure that most of you at some point in time have seen this error message. And what this means is that somehow or the other, emails are sitting inside CRM in a pending state, and they've been that way for a day or so. There are many reasons why this could happen. Anything from a misconfiguration of the user's email to an actual problem with either the server-side sync or the email router, depending on how your CRM system is configured. So in most cases, this is a bad thing. And as an administrator, you really kind of need to keep track of the email, because this is the one that will get you in trouble the quickest. Not knowing that emails are not exiting the system is a really bad thing for most people. And when people find out about it, especially people who are in charge of things, they tend to get very upset. So it's not good to have people in charge of things be upset. So keep that from happening. And the way you keep that from happening is to actually create another personal view that is I call emails with this is first part, emails with unresolved senders. So we're going to talk about this first. This is one that's very strange, and it will really depend on how an email is constructed within the system. What this means is we have an email address on an email, and there's no associated CRM record with it. So if you've never seen that before, a lot of times what happens is it's emails that get into the system, and they are coming from recipients that do not have an associated CRM record. So when you open the email, you'll see an email address with a red dot beside it. And all that means is I can't find this person. Or in some cases, I found 2 of these people. I don't know which one to actually give it to. So this is the first thing that you can use to find. And the reason this is an issue is because people, again, don't check that the email actually left. So someone is, depending on how your CRM system is configured, it will not send the email to that person. Sometimes it won't send the email at all to anybody because of this issue. So what happens, again, the email is in a state that will not send, and we need to fix that. So the pending emails are done by creating this type of thing. So this one can either be a personal view that you use, or you can actually create at the system level. Now, this is a very scary looking query, and you don't really have to worry about creating this by hand. There's already a view called My Pending Emails, And if you never work too deep with Advanced Find, if you open My Pending Emails and click on the Advanced Find button, it will show you the query used to create that specific view. All you do is remove the clause that specifies the current user, and you have this. So then you can save it. And again, this one I actually created as a personal view, which is a save view, as you can see. Otherwise, you can actually put it on the email entity as a system view. Either one of these will work. So let's jump into user management. So user management within CRM is going to be kind of tricky, so depending on which environment you're in. So what I'm talking about in this specific case is going to be things that are common to both on-premise and online. So there are some system views that are very handy, that are in part of the system, been there for a long time, that people really don't actually know are there sometimes. So a very strange one is disabled users consuming licenses. This does happen occasionally for some unknown reason, but this view will actually show it to you. Users with no assigned security roles. If you've ever logged into CRM as a CRM administrator or system administrator, you will see a note saying, hey, there are users without assigned security roles. Just to refresh your memory, users that do not have an assigned security role cannot log into the system. So what happens is they can't get in CRM because technically they're not a user. Even though they're a user inside the system, they don't have a security role. CRM doesn't know how to apply security to that person. Therefore, they pretty much do not exist. So you have to fix that. And the final one is a primary email pending approval. So again, depending on how you have your email configured within the system, you may have to actually physically approve email addresses for users and queues. This view will show you users that are in such a state where they're in the system, they have an email address, but you haven't actually pushed the approve button on the user. One that I find very useful, especially when you're trying to debug, just shall we say, randomly odd things with the users. I create a personal view, and I just call it enabled users detail. What's in that is just the first name, the email information, the business unit, their access and license type, and then their email statuses and delivery methods. So what this does is gives me a single view of all of the users with things that will cause them problems. So access mode and license type can restrict the type of data they see, primary email status, if it's approved or not, incoming and outgoing email, is using the email or router or server-side sync, is it using Outlook, is it using none. So all of these things can help you determine if you're having an issue with just a configuration of a user, or is it something deeper with the actual process itself. So this is very good for finding things like this. And again, since it's a CRM view, you can export it to Excel and kind of share it around if you need to. Okay, a couple workflow best practices here. So one of the things you can do within the workflow when you're adding steps is stop the workflow. And when you stop the workflow, you can specify a status. Usually it's either canceled or succeeded. In my opinion, you should never, ever, ever select canceled. And the reason that you don't do that is because it will generate an artificial piece of data that will totally screw up your maintenance plan. Remember back at the very beginning of the presentation, we were talking about how to use advanced find or personal views to actually show us things that were canceled or failed. If you stop a workflow for any reason besides it failed with a status of canceled, then you created a situation where the administrator has to go and look at the workflow to see if it actually canceled itself or did it get canceled by somebody. You can't tell between the two. And again, there's no reason to do that. I know there are people out there who say that's how you should stop a workflow, depending on the state. I have never found that to be of benefit at all. Either the workflow ran or it failed. That's generally the way things work in my world. If you got any differences, hey, then I'd love to hear them. Periodically verify your workflow inventory and usefulness. So as CRM is used, as your business changes, as users come and go, as administrators come and go, you can get lots of workflows that are in the system. And the thing about this is a lot of these were useful at one point in time, but no longer useful. A more common situation is they were useful to a specific person or set of persons at a specific time, those persons are no longer with the company, therefore the workflows are totally useless. I run into this all the time, especially when you're upgrading from, say, CRM 4 to 2015 or 13 or whatever it may be. So you've had a system that's been around a while, and a lot of times you literally get to a situation where, oh, we don't know what these do. Okay, well, you need them? I don't know. Can you tell me what they do? I'm like, well, yeah, I can show you what they do, but you need to tell me if that's still a useful process to you or not. A lot of times, if you don't know what they do, then you don't need them. So if you don't need them, you can either disable or delete the unused workflows. What I do a lot of times, if I'm going to delete them, I'll actually create a temporary solution, put the workflows into that solution, export that out as unmanaged, and then I have a copy of them in case something happens where I need to get them back. There is no documentation tool available to pull the steps of a workflow out. My snapshot documentation tool, I probably wasted so far about a week working on it, but the data is stored in such a way that we can't easily decipher it back into things that are human readable, strictly because of the way that it was implemented, and I can't do it in a supported manner. So basically, it's just, I've lost a bit of time working on it, and unfortunately, it just can't be done. The only thing you can do as far as documenting workflows like that is I recommend Snagit from TechSmith. It's a screenshot tool, and it can be used to actually capture the steps of a workflow. You can put them into a Word document, and that's as good as we can get right now. Okay, so that kind of finishes up the general things that we're working on. So let's go talk about some specific to online. There's just a few of them. So new to CRM 2015, we have a new entity called Alerts. It's actually on in the sales area. It's a subgroup called Alert. And most of the time so far, I only see it related to server-side sync issues or mailboxes. So the idea is when you log into CRM as an administrator, it'll actually pop up a box or alert saying you have alerts available to you. You can click on it and go to the alert view and see what's happening there. This is the only scenario I've seen so far. It's not really documented what else will be in there. It's also not documented if you can actually create alerts of your own. I haven't had time to play with that from a development standpoint, but that's also a possibility. New to the CRM 2015 spring release is the ability to capture plugin trace logs. Due to the transactional nature of CRM, since it is a SQL database-based system, the way that things work is if you have a failure in the event pipeline for a record, it will roll back all of the transactions associated with that. So if you have a plugin that fails and throws an exception, and you've written your exception to a logging entity that's custom to you, that log entry will also be rolled back. So you won't have any kind of way to capture the error itself if you didn't push it to somewhere different, like another database or another system, things like that. So the plugin trace log actually allows us to do this. So when we have an exception, we can actually record that in a safe place that's permanent. So this is a great addition to those of us that have plugins within our system, either that we created or that we have purchased as part of a commercial package or a free package for that matter. Monitor your resource utilization. So as you can see, you get X number of gigabytes of data. The default for CRM Online is 5. It can go up to 35, if I'm not mistaken, 35 gigabytes. You have 300 custom entities, 200 workflows and dialogues you can create. Most of the times you're going to run out with issues with the storage. That's just plain. The 300 custom entities is possible at times. Workflows and dialogues, again, depending on your automation matrix. But most of you run out of storage. What will consume your storage in 99% of all cases is attachments to email. So you can get a space utilization report from CRM Online support. So you have to call them or email them and say, I would like the database usage report. I don't really know exactly what it's called, but it's something like that. And what they will do is they'll run this report and send you the PDF, and it's just a list of the table and then how much space it's taking up. There is a table called annotation, which contains attachments. The one that you have to really watch out for is your emails, again, either coming or going. The the real kicker here is people who get creative with their email signature blocks. Okay, I know everybody has seen somebody with a very extensive and very pretty signature block. Some of you may even be one of those people. Well, the idea is do not put any kind of image inside of your signature block. I had to work with a partner a couple years ago, and one of their customers filled up their CRM Online because one of the sales guys had put an image for their golf tournament in his signature block and then emailed to a couple thousand people. And long story short, they filled up their database with these image files. So there's really no easy way to remove these without some programmatic access to it, and that's just a bit of work, but it can be done, by the way. But just kind of be mindful of your attachments, of your signature blocks and things like that. So that's really where most of these things come from. Okay, so we've kind of got through all that, the standard stuff and the online stuff. Again, most things are very, very similar, but then when you get into on-premise, you have access to other tools which are specific to the actual underlying equipment and software itself. So let's talk about system jobs management from a SQL standpoint. There is a table within SQL called the Async Operations Base Table. And what happens is everything we're talking about so far that's worked with system jobs gets put into that table. And again, it could be automated things that you've created. It could be system things that the CRM does to maintain itself. They all go into that. This KB article that mentions here actually has a series of SQL scripts that you can run against the table, and it will clean things up. So if you have a lot of data, and again, a lot of data is going to be 100% dependent on your system. I've seen a CRM server be rendered useless by 50,000 records. I've seen 3 million records, and you won't even know it's a problem. But the idea is if you have more than a few thousand, you probably have too many. So earlier we talked about using the bulk delete thing job for cleaning things up. That works just as well. This will be faster. So if you're coming to a situation where maybe you're a new administrator or you didn't even know that things were problems, you come into this situation, you can use these SQL scripts to actually clean things up. Okay, so a lot of times when I come into a new organization where this is the kind of thing I'm looking at, and it's on premise, I will use the SQL scripts to clean it up, and then I will create the bulk delete jobs to do the maintenance from that point forward. Okay, so that seems to work pretty well for me. So let's talk about the Windows event log. So we have to monitor the Windows event log just like we would the system job table within CRM. So the idea is you have to have some kind of process in place where you monitor it on a periodic basis. And this specific Windows event log, we're talking about the CRM server itself. So we're looking for warnings and errors. There are some errors that CRM will throw that are not errors per se. They are actually warnings. Anything having to do with ASP.NET, 90% of the time, 95% of the time is going to be a warning, even though it's a failure. Errors are generally occurring with system type things like the async service or some of the other behind the scenes processing services that CRM uses. Those produce errors. ASP.NET, which is the website itself, produces warnings. So what I do is I filter the log to show me critical, warning, and errors. And you can also filter it to show you dates, like the last 24 hours, as you can see here. And remember, don't get lost in the forest because of the trees and look at only a short period of time. Again, if you start looking for stuff, and I've done it too many times to know, I'm looking at errors and all of a sudden I find all these errors and I'm trying to figure out what happened and I realize I'm looking for something a month ago. And it doesn't mean no good at all because it was a point in time situation. It went away and I've been working for 2 hours trying to find a problem that didn't exist. Okay, so that's the real thing there. So when things happen within CRM that are very difficult to track down, we have to return to the CRM event log tracing. So here's some articles, and by the way, all these things I'm listing will be emailed to you later today, kind of a summary along with the recording that I'm doing of this, and I'll put on YouTube. So this will be recorded. I'm not giving the slides out, but you'll have the recording, and I'll give you some more information in the email itself. So here's some tools that I use to either do things or get information about what's going on. So we have the article that describes tracing. There's a diagnostics tool to actually change some things. We'll talk about it in a minute. And we have a trace log file viewer that will actually help us with viewing the results of our trace. So what do we use tracing for? Well, we use tracing when we get an error that we can't understand. CRM has gotten really good over the years of showing us the actual error that is occurring, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it says platform error, and that's the end of your information. When you get something like that, you have to actually turn tracing on so that you can look at the internal occurrences, find the error at the internal location, and then kind of trace down where it came from. So the idea is you turn on tracing, you reproduce the error, you turn off tracing, and then you review the trace log. So this diagnostics tool here, now again, this is a screenshot for 2011. There's one for 2013/2015. It's exactly the same. The idea is you can turn it on the server. You can set some specific categories or everything. You enable the tracing. Again, you reproduce the error, then you disable tracing, and it turns it off. And then what it does is it actually creates a series of text files in whatever directory you have specified there. And then you can use those files to either send to Microsoft or actually look for or look through to find the problem. Occasionally, you will get an error message that has the phrase reference number for administrators or support followed by a hashtag and then a number. This number has nothing to do with anything. The only thing it's used for is to find the error itself within the trace log. So the idea here is they've added a system where when an error occurs, they will generate a unique number that you can use, assuming you have tracing turned on, you can use to search for this error message number. So you go into search, you find this, then kind of look backwards a bit, and then you can find what actually happened. So if you see this, this is how you actually make that work. The tracing tool, so this is the one from Stunware. This has been around for a very long time. It's actually for CRM 4.0, but the trace file format really hasn't changed. So the idea here is you are looking for errors, and when you record data, or when you record your tracing data, the amount of tracing data that is going to be recorded will be 100% dependent on how many users you have on the system, how active it is at that specific point, and a whole bunch of other things. The reason that you turn it on, reproduce the error, and turn it off is because it is absolutely possible to fill up your hard drive. I've accidentally done that where I left it on and I was troubleshooting. I got busy troubleshooting and I forgot it was on. Next thing you know, the server went down because it filled up the C drive. Okay. So the idea is it will actually create a bunch of 10 megabyte maximum files that have error messages in them, or the trace logs of everything, including some error messages. So it's kind of up to you to find where this thing is. So in this example, you'll notice that I have that reference number, so I could actually search for that #76A0CE7E, and that will show me, oh, I've got an invalid parameter, blah, 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 on page, blah, 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 home_dashboards. What this actually means is there is something on my dashboard page that is basically not correct. Okay. So anyway, this is a kind of a whole session itself. So this is about all I'm going to do to this. But anyway, there are ways that you can kind of learn what you're doing by kind of just trial and error. Most of the time, this doesn't happen as frequently as you would think it would. But when it does happen, and you have to go into this mode, this trace tool is really cool for helping you find it. And the final thing on this to remember is sometimes one error will actually be caused by another error. So when you're looking at your list of errors here, the one in the middle may actually be the one that has the message you're looking for, but it could have been caused by an error 5 errors above it. So sometimes you have to kind of just backtrack up the chain to find what started the whole thing. And generally that's where you find your real error. This is not available to CRM Online, by the way, since we don't have access to this. So anytime you have to turn tracing on, you have to work with support, because they turn tracing on, they look for specific things, and then they debug it like that. They don't get you involved. It's like, okay, I'm getting this error, I need help troubleshooting it, and then they do all the work. But on premise, we have access to all of this stuff. So there is a system job editor that the support team came out with, and this very long URL is where you can find out information about it. But the idea here is CRM has some system jobs that are SQL level system jobs that occur occasionally. And they could either be daily, weekly, monthly, whatever it may be. The odd thing about the way that CRM creates these jobs is they set them to run every whatever period that they have deemed necessary, but they start the time that CRM was installed. So if you installed CRM at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, then your CRM maintenance jobs that are SQL-based maintenance jobs are going to run at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, as you can imagine, that's generally a bad thing. So what we do is we can use this tool, which you install on the CRM server, to actually move those to a more appropriate time. Say at night, you can change their execution interval. You can change when it's next going to run. Again, you have the organization you can change, the job type. There's several job types. That article that I showed earlier kind of points to that. And then you update the jobs, and what happens is it will basically just run it whenever you told it to with the new thing. So again, there's things like indexing and a few other cleanup jobs that happen. So what you want to do is run those at night or on the weekend or whatever it may be when you're not really in a prime business environment. Okay, well, I know that's kind of quick. There's a lot of information there. So again, we talked about reviewing our maintenance jobs, troubleshooting, monitoring the event log, things like that. Okay. I actually have a training course that I created called 21 Squared Administration for On-Premise. The idea behind this was that it is a self-study course that you could do one lesson per day for 21 days, and you would learn how to do something. The problem that I ran into with this is I couldn't get all of my on-premise stuff into 21 days. So I have 21 days and 5 bonus chapters. And then when I went to create the online version, there wasn't 21 days of stuff because there wasn't enough difference between the two things. So what I decided to do recently is I'm just going to create a book out of this. It's going to come out with electronic format first, of course, since it's faster to do. Then it'll come out with print. So what I'm doing is I'm this discount code you see here, 21S Admin Deep Dive. If you buy the 21 Squared Administration now, when the book comes out, I will send that to you automatically for free. So basically, it gives you a discount of like, in all honesty, I can't remember, 25, 30%. That basically is going to be what the difference is with Amazon for their pricing. So if you're interested in learning more about what we covered today at a really in-depth level, then get this. Again, it's guided as training. There are lessons that you can teach yourself, but it's mostly a reference material. So this is just something I kind of basically put together, and again, converting into a book so I can put the on-premise and online into one thing. So if you got any questions about this, then just drop me a line afterwards. Okay. So what questions do you have? Julius already talked about we're going to have this recorded here. So I'll put this up later today and then email everybody all the information. What other questions do you people have? Oops, sorry, Jeffrey. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Tell you what, Jeffrey, if you want to, I can unmute you if you want, and you can talk. Would that work? Okay, you're live. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Oh, hey, we use a hosted CRM platform through a partner, and we're quite often having problems where performance just drops down to nothing.
Yeah.
And we have very little visibility into the actual back end of the system. And so I've got a lot of suspicions about things they're probably not doing very well or not doing right, but I don't have any back end access to see what's going on. I'm wondering if there's any front-end reports that can kind of show me where the performance is dropping, like what's going on that would just grind things to a halt.
Okay, that is an excellent question. And you know what? I probably need to put that into the book as well. So the problem with having a partner-hosted scenario is it's very much like CRM Online. Someone else is in charge of your destiny. So
Yeah.
you don't, in most cases, you do not have access to the back end, as you mentioned. You can't install certain types of things, or they have to be installed in a certain type of way. There really and truly, there's nothing you can do to see that stuff. There's nothing on the front end that really tells you stuff. Now, there are some things that you can do to see the performance. There's actually a diagnostics page that's built into CRM that will show you how long it takes the data to get from the server to you. It's used for network troubleshooting in most cases. Sometimes you can use that to say, okay, well, this morning it was this many milliseconds, and now it's this many seconds. The other thing is, if you look in your system job and you start getting a lot of waiting events, so you create that personal view I was showing you to do where the message is not blank
Okay.
or contains data, you might see a lot of SQL timeouts. And
Interesting. Okay.
yeah, so in all likelihood, what has happened is either so in most cases you're going to be sharing a server with somebody else.
Yep. We know for
And
sure
so
we
that,
are. Yeah.
yeah, so that doesn't matter if you're CM online or in a hosted environment. You're sharing it with somebody else. Microsoft tries to kind of align people where they will move them around between what they call a scale group, which is a group. It's a SQL server with a set of databases. Your database being your CRM organization. So they'll move organizations around the system to try sometimes to make it fit better. Or if customers complain it's too slow, they'll do that. Because all it takes is a bigger gorilla in the room, and it's not you, and then they are taking
Interesting.
up
Okay.
all the process. And again, unfortunately, there's no way to really determine that besides seeing the effect. What I would do is I would start noting times.
Okay.
If there is a specific time that this has started to happen, it could be as simple as there's something going on the system
Yeah,
that they
in the
automated.
morning, I've been recording times, and in the mornings it seems like it's quite a bit worse. And so I'm assuming there's backup jobs running at night that are bleeding in the morning. I can't prove that. I don't know if that's the case, but
Well,
things
what
seem to, by 9 a.m. things seem to be better. And
well, I know what that one is. In 90% of the time, that's Outlook.
oh,
So what happens is before 9 o'clock, everybody's getting to work, and the first
yeah,
thing they do is turn on Outlook, and the second thing it does is synchronize with CRM. It depends how you're configured, of course.
okay,
What
all right.
happens is everybody is downloading stuff, or you have a pivot table inside of CRM that is pointing to it's a live pivot table. So your salespeople are getting in, or your executives, they're getting in, they're opening up their dashboard pivot table, and they're hitting refresh data, and it's downloading all the data. One of those two things is generally probably happening. But don't discount the fact that the backup is still running.
Okay, all right, that's great. Thank you very much for that information. That's very helpful.
You bet. Thanks, Jeffrey. Okay. Let's see. Here's another from Mira. What is recurring start does not contain data? There are recurring jobs that are system jobs that are internal system jobs, and they recur on a frequent basis. You don't have to worry about those because that's handled by the Microsoft part. So that's internal CRM. You can't do anything about them anyway. So when you see that on the query, it's just saying ignore the internal jobs that run like every couple hours to delete things like match code deletion or a few other things that they used to do. So that's what that is. Oops, hang on a second, I have to cough. Hey, Julius, I'm going to let you ask your question in person. Is that okay with you? Okay, Julius, you're live. Are you talking?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I guess my question is, um, y- I'm kind of looking for some of the best practices or what you would recommend for, say, a business analyst that is moving into a more CRM administrative positions or role in terms of helping organizations to lead their implementations strategies.
Okay. What kind of implementation strategies?
Well, so they say customers they're not say they're using Salesforce, the old one, and they're
Uh-huh.
looking to move into the CRM, Microsoft Dynamics CRM, on premise. So I'm a business analyst. I supported the 2011 instances, and I haven't worked on it until the 2013 and 15 is coming out. So, but then when you go onto the job, they don't just want you to gather the requirement. They actually want you to lead the implementation for them in terms of getting the programmer to write the plugins and the workflows. And that's the area that I think for me it's been I'm playing catch up in that sense. So I'm kind of looking for that guidance or some sort of recommendations that you could give.
Okay. Actually, I talk about that a great deal in my. I've got a little webinar called "So You Want to Be a CRM Architect," and that kind of covers a lot of the stuff. But the idea, the biggest thing is you need to understand what Dynamics CRM does and how it does it, because it's the only way that you can actually create a solution is to understand what CRM does, and then what CRM does not do. That's when you get the programmers involved. Okay, if you get the programmers involved without understanding what CRM does, you end up a lot of times replicating what CRM has already done. And the biggest problem with that is you won't do it the same way they did it, and your job is probably not as good as theirs, just flat out. And I've seen this multiple times. Basically, developers have a tendency to go code first without understanding the system, and that always creates problems for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And as I tell people, yeah, then you leave and somebody's left with your mess, and then they have to fix it and things like that. So the biggest thing is understand what CRM does, understand what you need to do to fulfill the requirement of the business. So that's your first understanding is knowing what CRM does. Then
Mm-hmm.
you need to learn how to ask very good detailed questions. Okay,
Yeah.
you can't get good answers without asking good questions, and you can't ask good questions unless you understand what the person does. So it's a combination of just your standard business analyst stuff. So know what the person does, understand how they do it, understand how the CRM system works, find a match as close as you can get, and then develop from there to fulfill the final version where you have the requirement that the user has, and then what CRM does added with a custom element to either. So that could be custom entities, could be workflow. Then we have to get into plugins maybe later. Plugins are in all honesty, as a developer, an architect of these things, I always save the plugins for last. If you have to write a plugin, what else could you have done to make that happen? It's what I always ask myself, because a piece of code written is a piece of code that must be maintained. Okay,
True.
so don't ever forget that. Okay, does that help?
Yeah, that helps. Thanks a lot.
You bet. Okay, thank you. And that other thing I was thinking about the other day, I'm gonna try to have it that other course or webinar here soon. Last time I did it, I kind of I had such a kind of a response. I had to do 3 in one day so that I could cover literally the globe. It was a lot of fun. So I got to find a time where I can do that, which maybe I could do it here in about less than a month or so. So I'll send a note out to everybody so that you know about that one too.
Sounds good.
You bet. Okay, what else we got here? Okay, Sandeep, what do you say? Can we delete the tables created by CRM when a user installs Citrix plugin? I don't really know what you mean by that. So I'm going to unmute you so you can tell me. Okay, your mic's live, Sandeep. Can you talk? Well, I guess not. Okay, Sandeep, let me know when you have your mic going, and I'll put you on. I'll go to the next one. Whereas can we schedule a bulk delete job for CRM Online? Yes. So that was the part that was shared. So bulk delete jobs for CRM Online, believe it or not, were actually added first. And so we could actually do that with CRM Online 4.0. We didn't get that ability to in on-premise until CRM 2011. But yeah, at this point in time, bulk delete jobs can be scheduled and created in all the environments. Okay, I got a great one here, and I'm just gonna call you Sri if that's okay. Uh, One of the problems we have being a system administrator, we are faced with creating a new environment for the CRM server every time we clone the servers. We face some or other issues. Is there any alternative? Well, it really depends on how you clone the servers. So, in all honesty, you don't really need to clone the server. So, I'll tell you what. Let me unmute your mic if that's okay, and you can tell me what you're running into. Okay, Sri, you ready?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi. Hi. So it's something like whenever we got a new developer into the team, I mean, it's like we just started the project and we are expecting people will be coming into the teams. And whenever we got a new team member, we thought like, yeah, let's clone this server once, and then we can use other developer as it is. But whenever we clone it, we used to say and sound something like, deployment administrator is not configured properly. They cannot import the organization. They cannot create a new organization. Or it says that server don't have access to it, something like that. All sort of stupid errors we used to get.
Yeah.
Is it a good practice to clone a CRM server, or it's always suggested to start from scratch installation of CRM?
Well, that kind of depends because the biggest issue is you're not only cloning the CRM server, you have to clone the SQL server as well, right?
Yep.
And there are just issues around that. I've really never done that, quite honestly, because it just you've got to rename the server. You have to give it a different ID. Then you have to rename the SQL server. It just kind of causes a problem. In most cases, if you can build a self-contained one, I mean, there are articles out there that I've seen that show you how to do all this stuff with, cloning stuff. There's that sysprep utility that will, fix something after you clone it, so you can start a new one up. But I really haven't really done that much with that. A lot of times you can just get by with having one development server that the user uses, and then for their personal stuff, if you have a virtual machine, that's generally how I've done it. Is it with a virtual machine? It's just copy the virtual machine, not the physical server. Does that help at all?
Right. Yeah. Answer the point. Yep. Thank you.
Let's see here. Oh, Sandeep. Okay, Sandeep. Okay. Okay, Sandeep, how are you doing?
I'm good, Mitch. How are you?
Good. Good hearing from you again.
Yeah, good to hear you too. I have a quick question for you. I mean, actually a couple of questions. So we use a CRM 2011 on-premise system. So we started rolling out to the users to start using it from the Outlook plugin. So whenever users install the Outlook plugin on their desktops and start connecting to the system, CRM is creating like 2 tables for each user in the database.
Yes, the sync tables.
Yes.
Yes, you can clean those out.
Okay, so because if they are online, it creates 3 tables, and if it is on-premise, they create only 2. So we initially rolled out to like 50 users, like as an pilot. So we start seeing like 100 new tables created in the database. So we were not exact. I'm kind of researching if we can delete those. So platform to ask that. So
I cover that in the book here. But if you just go out and look, you can find a script. It's on the internet. There's a couple variations of it that will delete things like over 30 days old. Basically, those are required by Outlook because that's how it keeps track of what's being synced. So you have to have them. But they do expire. So if you find do a Google search, find that script, and then you can just run it on a periodic basis, and then kind of clean it up.
Yeah, I found that script, Mitch. I already saw that, but I wasn't sure because to run that or not. So I thought of talking.
Yeah, find the one. I think Customer Effective now Hitachi is the one who created the last version of that had the over 30 days old. So basically, that's the one that actually does the kind of expired version of that. So it is very useful, like I said, because these things kind of get created and then they'll get created again, and the old ones are invalid and not even used. So it should be okay to do that. I haven't seen any problems with that. There are a lot of things out there that can cause us issues, but that one you should be able to clean those sync tables up successfully.
Okay, sure. Thanks much. And I have one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
We kind of get those SQL Server timeout issues once in a while, and we don't know exactly what the problem is. But when we look at the logs in the database, it shows that that the users are trying to do. It comes from the IIS servers. So we kind of not exactly sure like what's going on. It happens like once in a while. The blocking it causes SQL blocking on the database, and it eventually goes away like in a couple of hours. But it happens like once in a while.
Okay. Boy, that's a tough one. So locking and blocking issues have a lot to do with how you're using CRM, and there's really no really pattern to it in a lot of cases. So what happens is you have a situation where you're doing something and it will lock something, and then somebody tries to do something with it and it's blocked, and then depending on what happens is it will pick one of the two people to lose, and it will kill that process and keep the other one going.
Yeah, because we keep our database administrator like try to kill that process, but it comes back right again, so it doesn't let us kill those.
I bet you in many cases it's actually related to the async operation table.
Yes, I agree. And
yes.
But when we look at the database logs, it shows that like user is trying to do on the async operation base table, or it has like sometimes it is trying to insert records into the POA table.
Okay, and, so there's a couple things there. So the POA table he's talking about is what they call the principal object access table. So it's the singular table within Dynamics CRM that controls all the security for CRM. Okay, so every time you share a record or create a record or things like that, it will create a record inside that POA table. The problem is, Sandeep, you said 2011. Did this come from 4.0?
Oh no, 2011.
Okay.
No, it's a brand new 2011 system. So.
Okay. There are instances, especially when you upgrade from 4.0, sometimes they happen in 2011 where it will create orphan records. So if you look at your POA table and it's in the millions of rows, like the very vast millions of rows, and you don't have anywhere near that amount of data in your main tables, then there's probably orphan records in there.
Yeah, we kind of run that every day to clean up the POA table.
Yeah.
We kind of run that script on the database to clean up all the orphan records on POA. So.
Okay. Well, then probably it's going to be a combination of your async table and the whatever you're doing to the records. So I would say that maybe you have your security misconfigured. That's a possibility. Either that, or you're just pushing too much data through the system.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll look into that. Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Thanks, Mitch. Yeah.
You bet. Okay. Jeffrey says, Sri, to use a differencing VHD if you're using Hyper-V to clone your thing. That's good. Thanks, Jeffrey. Okay, Amir has another question. Do you recommend the forward mailbox with server-side sync for email sync or email router? That is a great question. That will really be dependent on how many users you have and how much email you have. The idea behind having a forwarding mailbox is the email router only has one mailbox to look in instead of having one mailbox for each user. So it's going to be less intensive of opening and closing the mailbox on Exchange, for instance. If you're talking about the server-side sync that comes with CRM 2013 and above, quite honestly, I cannot recommend using server-side sync at this point in time because it's a bit of a black box and there's no way to tell what's happening, quite honestly. The email router is pretty cut and dry. It's been around forever. It works or it doesn't. When you have a problem, it logs you got a problem. You can track it down. The server-side sync, I've had it work, not work. I have it not work, and it doesn't tell me why. I've had it turn itself on and fix itself without any interaction from me. So all these things make me not want to point to it. So really, again, it kind of depends on your situation. So again, the forward mailbox, all it is you have a rule that forwards all the inbound email to a single mailbox. That rule is applied at the Exchange level, and then the email router just checks one mailbox for that email. So it kind of really depends, again, how many users you have, how many emails you have per day, and you kind of have to make the justification. Anybody else? No? Okay. Well, hey, I really appreciate the time today. Like I said, I'll email everybody once I get the YouTube thing up and loaded later today or maybe first thing in the morning, and I'll include all the information that I covered today on the slides, some of the tools we talked about, and then a link to the recording if you need it. And if anything pops up that you have a question on, just feel free to email me, and we can get back to you later. Okay? Thanks a lot, everybody.